Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you all for spending some time with us this morning. I mean, we're always absolutely delighted to come and talk to people who could potentially find out more about the scheme and see whether it could be of use or help to them. And the scheme's been running for about was a little over 40 years now, and in that time we've helped I think around sort of 5-6 million people achieve greater independence and freedom through access to an affordable, kind of worry-free car package, and it's the cars, wheelchairs and scooters, as you'll hear about, adapted vehicles and drive from wheelchair vehicles all included. So what we're planning to do today is just to give you a broad introduction to the scheme. I work for the marketing and communications team, so I'll just give you that overview. And then my colleagues, Robert and Harry, are going to go into a bit more specific areas around the support we can specifically provide on wheelchair accessible vehicles and other adaptations and conversions that are suitable for people who may be part of the Limbless Association or in that situation. So I'll kick off just with a few initial slides just to give you that overview of the scheme. After that, I'll pass over to the colleagues, as I say. So I'll just get this presentation up, if you'll bear with me for a moment. So the scheme, for those who may not be familiar with it, operates on a large scale. There's about 1.8 million people across the UK who could actually benefit from the Motability Scheme, who receive one of the qualifying allowances. Of those, we've got about a third of the people who could qualify who are on the scheme at the moment. And actually, it's fast approaching 640,000 customers, because we're after the kind of COVID changes and the PIP and DLA changes, we're starting to be back in a kind of growing scheme situation. So that's actually a phenomenal number of customers, and that brings us lots of advantages. So we really can work with manufacturers and dealers and converter partners and so on, because that scale enables us to negotiate kind of really good arrangements and on behalf of our customer base. So within that customer base, we've got around 32,500 wheelchair accessible vehicles, and about 17,000 of our customers choose to take a powered wheelchair or scooter instead of the car. And we are an organisation that focuses really hard on making our customers kind of content with our services. We measure every 6 months how satisfied the customers are, and on average people score us 9.8 out of 10, which is obviously, we're proud, but we're never complacent, because we're always wanting to see where the next demands are going to come from. And our organisation, as you'll see in a moment, is actually it's a private company. We work under contract to the Motability charity, but any profit that we make is reinvested for the benefit of disabled people. So to an extent, we're a kind of a social purpose in that way. Although the profit is made, it always goes back into supporting people with disabilities. And as mentioned, it's been going for over 40 years, and we've been involved since 1978. When it started on a very small scale with just a couple of manufacturers supporting it, it was a kind of early public-private partnership, really, a pioneering activity by Lord Goodman and Lord Stirling, who remains the life chairman of the scheme. And we are delighted to have helped so many people during that time, and not just people with disabilities, but also their families. So to access the scheme, there are specific allowances, which are the passport to the scheme, and they are the high rate mobility component of disability living allowance, the enhanced rate of mobility component of PIP, the child disability payments in Scotland, as that sort of responsibility is gradually transferring over in Scotland to the Scottish Government, with whom we've been working very closely to make that seamless for our customers there, War Pensioners Mobility Supplement, and the AFIP Armed Forces Independence Payment. So that is the qualifying range of allowances for the scheme. Unfortunately, the way the scheme is set up, we can only take those allowances. So we can't take other allowances. But within that range, it's pretty broad, and parents or carers can apply for a car on behalf of their child. So we've got customers from the age of 3 up to 100 or more, because if people qualify for those allowances, as you may know, before the age of 65, they can keep them for life. And so we do have some older customers as well. And about 2/3 of our customers actually drive themselves, or at least are a named driver on the scheme. Others may be supported by carers, family members, or partners. And what does it include? Well, there's a wide range. I mean, it's about, at the moment, I think it's about 1,700 different makes and models to choose from, all across the kind of mainstream vehicle range you'd expect to see, in any dealership, all the major manufacturers. What you get is a new car every 3 years. If it's an adapted vehicle, it's a longer it's sort of 5-year program, and it includes insurance and servicing, maintenance, breakdown assistance, and tires and windscreens. We've got a lot of adaptations that are actually kind of bolted into the lease package, so there's no additional cost, although some adaptations will require a bit more of a payment at the start. We allow people 60,000 miles over the 3 years, and as I've mentioned, scooters and wheelchairs are also available. And about 45 of those cars are available for less than the mobility allowance, and about 400 of them you can pay an advance payment under £100. Now, that advance payment is a down payment at the start of the lease, which makes up the difference between the bundle of costs of the car and what the allowance would pay for over that 3 or 5 year program. So if people want to open up more choice, then they can pay, up to around £2,500 or slightly more at the beginning of the lease, and then that will open up more availability. But there are a lot of cars, as you can see, available for just a few £100s extra at the moment. And I mentioned our scale. I mean, it surprises people to know that we buy about 10% of the new cars in the UK every year. So we are a big part of the British car market, and we also are the biggest supplier of used cars to the trade. So we buy the cars, 3 years later we sell them back to the dealerships, and we buy and sell around 220,000 cars a year, which means there are days when we're selling kind of 80 to 100 cars a day. So it's a massive kind of program of activity. And just briefly, in terms of how we operate, we manage the car and scooter schemes. As I've mentioned, kind of we're owned by banks as an independent company, but we're overseen by the Motability charity that sets performance criteria for us. We work very closely with the Department for Work and Pensions, who, once someone signs up for the scheme, they transfer the allowance over to us. We work with a number of suppliers to aggregate those services so that our customers are supported with roadside recovery and insurance and so on, tire services. At the end of the 3 years, we take the car back and we sell it through our online networks, and it kind of works very effectively, actually, has done for many years. And as I've mentioned, we measure our customer satisfaction. This is what we call our green wheel. We measure all these key points of contact with our customer base, and if anything drops kind of below a certain level, we'll be very active in our steps to try and improve it. We've got actually 3 sites, Motability Operations, our company. We have a little over 1,000 or about 1,200 employees in 3 locations. And I guess, if you wanted to see our kind of direction of travel, it will be a lot. We provide a lot of online telephony support with our call center, but we're probably gradually moving towards expanding that to more online services and provision. And I guess that, again, that won't surprise any of you that we want to sort of expand into multiple different ways that people can get in touch with us. You know, a lot of younger people, I know my children don't necessarily want to pick up the phone when they want to get in touch with people now. They really just want to sort things out on the phone at any time that suits them, really. So we're working hard to transform our website and develop customer accounts so that people can actually go in and make changes to the account and answer questions at any time that suits them, really, in their own space. I think one significant move in that way is we used to send out massive amounts of checks when people finish the scheme. If they bring the car back in good condition, they get a good condition bonus, and those used to always be done by check. A lot of checks still are sent out, but we've started to move to digital payments, which is a lot easier, and particularly during COVID, you know, it saved people having to go down to the bank and so on with all of that. So just to sort of round off a 2 or 3 slides for me, just to talk a little bit about how we kind of reach out and engage. We have, as I mentioned, over 1 million people who could benefit from the scheme who are not, for one reason or another, currently customers. And one of the ways we both reach out to potential customers, but also provide services for existing customers who are wondering what car to choose next time, is we have a program of summer events. Now, normally we would have 5 or 6 road shows, and they're one big days that are held in big exhibition centres across the UK in different locations, and about 22,000 people come along to those events every year to physically have a look at the cars, explore adaptations, try an adapted test drive, look at kind of some converted vehicles, etc., etc. Unfortunately, of course, COVID just put a huge swathe through all of that. It's really hard to get a truly socially distant event on that scale for, you know, that number of, you know, we've got kind of 2,000 or 3,000 people coming to an event, you know, trying to get that working in a socially distanced way as was impossible over this last summer and this. So we're doing something this year for the first time, which is our virtual One Big Day. And if anyone wants to find out more about the scheme and kind of dip into some of our speaker sessions, then do sign up for that. It's on the 6th and 7th of August. And we've got a day of specialist speakers talking about all sorts of topics, including adapted and converted vehicles. There'll be live chat with all the exhibitors and from our customer service and grants teams. And there's also the chance to look virtually anyway at all the cars and so on, and wheelchairs that are available. And then next year, we obviously hope to have everything back so that we can run a physical event as well. But that's a bit of a pilot for us, which hopefully will be very successful. Another thing we offer for our customers and potential customers is we know how much people enjoy kind of getting out to make the most of the UK once they have their car. So we work with the Rough Guides to produce a guide to accessible Britain, which is updated every kind of 2 to 3 years. It's got around 200 different venues which have been tested out on the ground by people with disabilities, who go through and explore, you know, how accessible it is, what, how the quality of the event, and it covers a broad range of different disabilities, both kind of physical mobility and mental health and cognitive neurodiverse conditions. So that one is available online at accessibleguide.co.uk or via our website as well, and you can download the whole guide, or you can look at bits of it, or kind of search it geographically as well. And then I've mentioned that we have about 1 million people who could benefit from the scheme and are not currently customers. One of the biggest challenges we've got is that people just aren't aware of the scheme and what it offers, and that they're almost ruling themselves out of it because they think it's something that it isn't. And so we have actually launched our first wide widespread integrated awareness raising campaign. I don't know if people have seen our advertisement, which we've put on TV. It's been running on ITV and Sky channels. We've had some radio and some print as well. And it just features some customers out and about enjoying their cars, a bit of a kind of joyous song behind it, highlighting that independence and freedom that people tell us is what their experience of the Motability Scheme is like. And we've had a really good feedback on the ad. I think people have taken to it and the characters in it, and we've got some fantastic customers part of the ad who are now kind of talking a bit about it in online, in social media and so on, kind of promoting it themselves. So that is a first step. I think there's much more we can do, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've been able to talk to you guys today as well, because being able to talk directly and sort of showcase some of the potential features and benefits of the scheme is another really good way of helping to build that understanding. So I think that's enough from me in terms of the overview. I'm obviously going to be here throughout the session, and we'll be able to also answer any questions that you've got in the Q&A session. But I'd like to hand over now to my colleagues who are going to talk more specifically about adaptations and wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Excellent. Okay, so good morning, everyone. As Delia has outlined, the Motability Scheme is essentially a car leasing scheme, but within that there are a range of options. You can lease a standard car, you can also lease a powered wheelchair or scooter, you can also lease a wheelchair accessible vehicle, or you can lease a car with adaptations. So there's a wide range of options. The only real restriction at the moment is that it's currently only possible to have one agreement at a time. So it isn't possible to lease a wheelchair accessible vehicle and also lease a powered wheelchair to go with that vehicle. So at the moment, only one product at a time, but there are a huge range of products within there. Let's talk in a little bit more detail about how the scheme works. The disabled person does not need to be the driver. It's a popular misconception that you have to be a driver to be on the Motability Scheme. I think Delia mentioned earlier that about 2/3 of our customers actually drive the vehicles themselves. But within the agreement, it's possible to have up to 3 named drivers insured to drive the car, and the disabled person doesn't need to be one of them. I think Delia also mentioned the good condition bonus. So at the end of the lease, when the car is returned, there is a good condition bonus payable. And currently that's £600 for a car and £900 for a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And mainly we want to talk today about the range of adaptations that are available to make it easier to get in and out of the car and to drive the car, many of which can be fitted before you collect your new Motability car. So on the day of collection, the car is there with all the adaptations on, ready to drive away. It's possibly useful to talk in a little bit more detail about powered wheelchairs before we move on to adaptations. There are around 400 different powered wheelchairs and scooters available on the scheme. That goes from the really sort of straightforward, simple, small folding scooters that you'll see advertised on the TV and in the colour supplements, right up to complex, sophisticated powered wheelchairs with a lot of functionality and a lot of specialist sort of orthopedics and seating arrangements with them. So it covers the whole range. Most of them cost less than the weekly disability allowance. And the way it works is that you sign across your allowance, and then the unused portion of your allowance is returned to you. So there are specialist dealers throughout the country who are signed up to supply powered wheelchairs and scooters onto the Motability Scheme. And a limited number of those are able to work with customers and occupational therapists to really understand the complex specifications of the high-end wheelchairs and to build custom-built wheelchairs to suit customers' specific needs. The full range is available on the website at www.motability.co.uk. There's a search facility on there. You can browse through the range of scooters and wheelchairs that are priced on the scheme. And you can also look at a list of the dealers who are able to supply through the Motability scheme. Okay, next slide, please. Right, let's talk, again, Delia's covered this, but let's talk about it in a little bit more detail, car advance payments and how the pricing scheme works. Right at the moment, because of some supply issues around availability of microchips post-COVID, there are 1,350 different models available on the scheme from 30 manufacturers. That's lower than it would normally be. Normally that would be closer to the sort of 1,800. There's about 200 cars on there that cost no more than the allowance. As Delia mentioned earlier, what you can do is, if you want a higher specification car or a larger car, you can top up the allowance in the form of an advance payment, which allows you to access a complete range of vehicles. The scheme is what's known in the jargon as user chooser. So you select the car that works best for you, and you can look on our website. Again, there's a full search facility on the website at www.motability.co.uk, which allows you to look at cars, compare cars, see what the advance payments are on various cars. And I've just pulled 2 or 3 examples out there at the sort of £500 mark to give you an indication of the kind of vehicles that are available and the kind of advance payments that would be attracting, those cars would attract on the scheme. If you're unable to afford the advance payment on the car that you need and your family need, you may have a large family and you may need a large car but not be able to afford the advance payment. There is financial help available through the Motability charity. It is subject to means testing, but it is available for those people who need it. Okay, before we talk about adaptations, really the first adaptation is probably an automatic gearbox. And many customers find that they're able to drive an automatic car with no additional adaptations. Right now, there are 54 automatic cars to choose from on the scheme at no advance payment in addition to your weekly allowance. That does include hybrid and fully electric vehicles, the green agenda and emissions, and the move towards electric vehicles is becoming a more important piece for everybody. So we do have a range of hybrid and fully electric vehicles available. And as I say, there are automatic gearbox, fully electric vehicles available at no additional payment on the scheme right now. If you look for a slightly higher contribution, a £500 advance payment, the choice of automatics increases from 54 to 142 cars. And automatics are really important in the kind of adaptations world, because many of the driving adaptations that Harry's going to start talking to you about and take you through in a little bit more detail can really only be fitted to cars that have got an automatic gearbox. So I'll pass you over to Harry to give you a little bit more detail about adaptations.
Thanks, Robert. So as you've mentioned, adaptations, they're basically a range of devices that can be fitted to your car to hopefully make driving or traveling a lot easier. And they probably fall into 3 types. So how to help you drive, stow your wheelchair or scooter, or getting in and out of the vehicle. And so we'll go into some of those details in the next couple of slides here. At the moment, the scheme offers around 500 different adaptations, and which are available for no extra cost, and they're all fitted at the start of the lease. So for when you go to see a car dealer to place your order, you make them aware that you might need some adaptations to go onto the vehicle, and they will then take you through that process. We work with just over, I think it's about 120 actually adaptation specialists, so it's a little over 100, and they can basically give you the expert advice that you need to make the right decision. And what I would say is try to go to the adaptation installer to get some help and advice about what the right solution might be for you, and then you can go to your car dealer and say, right, this is what I need and this is the type of vehicle that I want to go to. Because as Robert's mentioned, for most adaptations to work, they need to be an automatic sort of gearbox, but there's also some other things as well, depending on the stowage of the wheelchair. As an example, you might need a bigger boot, and you don't want to start going down the process of going with a Ford Fiesta, say, and that might be too small. So you want to sort of work start the adaptations and then work to ordering your car. If though you're completely unsure and you don't really know what you might need, we can help you get a specialist assessment done, and that will be at your local drivability centre. If that is something you are interested in, you can contact our call centre and they will be able to sort of set that up in terms of helping you out find your local one, and then they'll be able to take you through a full assessment effectively of this is your scenario and this is what you might need, which again will really help you, because at the time you come to place in an order for a car, you'll know exactly what you need and take it from there. So first type of adaptation that I wanted to talk to you about were hand controls. So it's the most common driving adaptation on the scheme, and they are hand operated, so accelerating and braking. Okay, as you can see on the image on the sort of the right there, what you'll be doing is pulling the lever towards the steering wheel to accelerate, and you push it away to brake. So it's quite straightforward, and as I say, they're very common on the scheme today. And they're often used in conjunction with a steering aid, and you can see that in sort of the bottom right there. That's sort of a cut of a steering wheel, and then you kind of have that sort of device sort of on there, and you normally at like the 10 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position on the steering wheel, so you can kind of move the wheel and potentially do that all at the same time. Switches can also be added, so these adaptations do get a little bit more complex, but in a really good way. There's more functionality available, and so you can add things like the horn on there, or the indicators, or your lights, or whatever that might be, and you can do all of that without taking your hand off of that adaptation. Another common adaptation that we see on the scheme is a left foot accelerator. So this is a really good solution for people with lower limb disabilities, and they can quickly be changed back to standard as well. So as Robert's mentioned earlier, you can have 3 different drivers on a policy. Only one person might need that left foot accelerator. It doesn't mean that the other 2 people need to learn to drive with the left foot accelerator as well. As the image kind of shows you there, it can actually just be pushed up and out of the way, so it's not going to be in the way or distracting for anybody else. So I say it's really quite common, and the adaptation installer that you would want to speak to, they'll be able to take you through that in terms of using it in a safe way. And if you needed any sort of familiarisation with that, you've got the drivability centre as well to sort of help you. The next one I wanted to talk to you about was wheelchair hoist. So this is all about not necessarily driving the vehicle. So this is getting your wheelchair or scooter in and out of the vehicle. So it's designed to help drivers or passengers wanting to lift the wheelchair in and out of the vehicle, and it increases that independence by removing the requirement for somebody to physically lift it up or take it out. They range in weight capacities as well. So if you've got a lightweight one, you'll have a specific sort of hoist that can go in there. If it's a bit heavier, it has sort of different capacities there. But as I mentioned earlier on, this is one of the sort of the key ones that you'd want to be sort of checking in with your adaptation installer on first before placing an order for a car, because unfortunately we see it a few times where the vehicle's been ordered, it comes to the point of needing one of these, and actually the boot space isn't big enough for the wheelchair to fit in or the scooter to fit in. So yeah, get that expert advice from the adaptation installer. I say there's 120 out there, so there will be a local one for you. And if you need to find who that is, if you're ever unsure, you go onto the Motability website that Robert sort of shared earlier, and you can put your sort of postcode details in, and that you'll be able to bring up who the closest one to you is. And then we talked about getting in and out of the car, and a transfer plate is designed to make this as easy as possible and make a sideways transfer between the wheelchair and then the vehicle seat. And you can kind of just see it added on to the side of the chair there. You can actually, that's on the passenger position, you can get them on the driver's position as well. And they can be manual or electric, depending on what you want to use. There's a number of products available on the scheme, depending on your scenario as well. And yeah, I guess transfer plates, they can easily be set for your desired height as well in terms of what the vehicle is as well, and make it as comfortable and as easy as possible for each individual user. So that was the pretty quick overview of adaptations. As Delia mentioned, I'll be back around sort of the end here for the Q&A if you've got any more questions on adaptations. But I'm going to hand back to Robert, who's just going to take you through wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Thank you, Harry. Wheelchair accessible vehicles is as a term is a bit of a mouthful. So generally these tend to get referred to as WAVs, but essentially they are specially converted vehicles that have been structurally modified. So a disabled person can enter the vehicle in their wheelchair and travel in their wheelchair as either a passenger or a driver. Wheelchair users tend to sit more upright and much taller than you would do in a normal car seat. So that does mean that you know height inside the vehicle is a bit of an issue. So that does also mean that not all cars are suitable for conversion. You can't take some of the more modern, more sleek, more low to the ground vehicles and realistically make them wheelchair accessible. So the choice is a little bit more limited, and they tend to be the sort of larger SUV style cars rather than, unfortunately, the sleek little nippy cars that we might wish to be driving. But Motability works with 18 specialist converters. All 18 provide nationwide coverage, so you shouldn't have any issues with somebody saying, oh no, we're based in Devon and you're in Scotland. A converter in Devon will be quite happy to supply a vehicle in Scotland and vice versa. But between them, those 18 converters can offer over 600 different configurations of WAV. So there's something in there to suit most customers' needs. And if there isn't something that specifically meets their needs, there are opportunities to make variations to them and to create one-off configurations to suit specific customer needs. Because of the cost of the conversion, WAVs usually have a higher advance payment than cars. I say there's a range of cars available at no advance payment. Unfortunately, there are no WAVs available at no advance payment, partly because of the cost of conversion and partly because of the need to base the conversion on typically slightly larger cars. But there is financial help available from Motability, the charity, for those customers who need a WAV but can't afford the advance payment on one that meets their needs. It is subject to means testing, but there is very definitely financial help available. Very important when you're choosing a WAV to make sure that you get the right one. That may sound obvious, but there are, WAVs come in, as I say, there's 600 different configurations, and WAVs come in a huge range of sizes and seating layouts and configurations. So it's really important to consider the whole family, not just the wheelchair user. There may be children, there may be grandchildren, there may be other family members, there may be the family dog. And other equipment. A lot of people have got additional equipment that they want to carry around, either because of their disability or because of sports that they want to participate in. And there are WAVs around that will accommodate all of that. But it's really important to choose the right size WAV for your needs. To help you do that, all of our 18 converters offer no cost, no obligation home demonstrations to potential Motability WAV customers. So if you're looking at a WAV, they will bring the one that you're interested in to your home so that you can try it out in your home environment. You can take it to the shops to make sure that it'll go in the parking spaces, and you can really test it out thoroughly to make sure it meets your needs before you make any commitment. And you can, and I would positively encourage anyone who's considering taking a WAV on the Motability scheme to get more than one demonstration. There's no problem at all about having 2, 3, 4, 5 demonstrations to make sure that you get the right vehicle. WAVs are offered on a 5-year all-inclusive lease. The lease is exactly the same in terms of structure as it is for cars. So it includes replacement tyres, it includes service, maintenance, repair, it includes insurance. Again, you can have 3 named drivers. The key elements of the lease are exactly the same. It's just for 5 years rather than 3. And what that does mean is that at the end of the lease, as I mentioned earlier, the good condition bonus on a WAV is £900 rather than the 600 on a car. Okay, most WAVs are designed for wheelchair users to travel as a passenger, but there are some WAVs that enable you to get your wheelchair into the driving position and drive independently as a full-time wheelchair user in a vehicle that is specially converted for you. So the full range of driving adaptations that Harry was talking about earlier, push-pull hand controls, left foot accelerators, electronic ring throttles are all available on WAVs. Anything that you can get as a driving adaptation on a standard production car, you can also get on a WAV at the same prices and with the same availability and with exactly the same commitment that they'll be fitted before the car is handed over to you. In some vehicles, there's also an option to transfer from your wheelchair into a powered driver's seat. Generally, if it's possible to transfer into a seat, it's preferable. And they tend to be a bit more comfortable than traveling in a wheelchair, and they were specifically designed for traveling in a vehicle, so they just tend to work a little bit better. But most customers who want to drive from a wheelchair usually find that they're likely to need financial help from Motability in order to meet the advance payment and adaptation costs. But it is available. Once again, if you need financial help, Motability as a charity are able to provide grants to get you into the vehicle you need. So just to give you a little summary of what we've been talking about today, adaptations can help with getting in and out, stowing wheelchairs, and with driving. They can be ordered through your dealer and they will be fitted before you take delivery of the car. If you haven't had adaptations before, or you haven't had the specific adaptation you're considering, think about whether you'd like to get a drivability assessment. We can help you arrange that. The drivability assessment centres have a range of vehicles with adaptations on them. You can go and try them. You can go and test drive a push-pull hand control system. You can go and test drive a left foot accelerator with somebody who is an expert who in advising you about whether that's the right solution for you and suggesting alternatives. You can also take advantage of the adaptation specialists and their knowledge and their expertise and experience. They will give you advice both on what controls are available and on which cars work best with those controls, particularly if you're considering a boot hoist to carry a wheelchair in the back of the vehicle. Would really urge you to talk to an adaptation specialist first to make sure that both the wheelchair and the hoist will fit in the car that you're planning to use. WAV conversions, especially converted for wheelchair access, they allow you to travel safely as a passenger or a driver in your wheelchair. Over 600 available from 18 different specialists. As I said before, really important that you make full advantage of the no cost, no obligation home demonstrations to make sure that you get the right WAV for you and your family. The advance payments on WAVs are a little higher, but there is financial help available from Motability for those people who can't afford the vehicle that meets their needs. It's really all about providing a range of options that will enable people to get mobile.